Okay, so the next assignment we're going to do is a stencil box, and it's called the hidden stencil box. The reason I call it the hidden stencil box is because everybody starts with the exact same box using a stencil, which I'll show you in just a second, but you have to make it original, somehow make it different from everybody else's, either realism themed, meaning something in reality, or something completely mythological. So you'll see this fish down here is a box, and I'll step over here. They all start with the same box. So essentially it was just this little square box, and I'll show you how to get to that square in just or a cube in just a second, or I think box is a better word for it. But this is one from last year, and it does need to have a handle and a lid. That's part of the grading. So this one's got a little lid here, and the fin fits the theme and is the handle. So I'll set that aside for now. I've got my slab rolled out to a 1/4 inch thick. So a paint stick on each side, rolled it out. Should be 9 by 9, somewhere in that range. As long as the stencil fits on there, you know it's 9 by 9 or a little bigger. So this is the stencil. Everybody starts with the same thing. And I'm gonna set it on here. And I don't wanna leave it on there too long, otherwise the stencil starts to get soggy and wet and it just doesn't hold up for me to carve around it. So I'm gonna carve around it now, starting here. And again, always tilt the needle tool so it cuts nice and clean. And I want to keep it against the stencil. I don't want to go underneath and cut at a slant. Otherwise it'll create some difficulties for me later when I try to put these flaps up. And I'll show you what I mean when I get there. So just carving around. You want to do this as precisely as possible. Otherwise you'll end up with some flaps that are taller or lower than the others. And it'll be harder to make the lid later on, which I'll show you in just a few. So I always make a little carving to release some of that clay from the outside. And I'm going to keep this. I need the scraps for coils later on. So once you get your slab rolled out, you get the stencil cut, you want to let this dry for a bit. Right now they're going to be kind of floppy. Okay? If I just stuck them together right now, it'll end up sagging out the bottom and it makes it uneven at the top, so it won't all match. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple real quick. I know it's going to end up sagging and I have some precautions to take for that, but I'm going to do what's called beveling, and beveling just makes it so that it's fit. So you'll see right now, if I take these corners, there's this big notch here that I would have to fill in with some other clay or blending, but I can do that much quicker. I learned this from a student a few years back, but I take the serrated rib, so I'm going to score it anyway to get it to stick together, but I'm going to score it pretty heavily. So it kind of cuts away at that slant, so you can see that. I'm going to do 2 edges on 2 sides. So again, I had it where it was really sharp here, and I'm just cutting away at that at a slant, like this one here. So now I'm going to slip that together. I kind of use an excess amount because it helps me with blending. So now I'm going to pinch those 2 together, like so. And again, this is pretty wet, so they're not going to stick the way they're supposed to, but I just want to show you. So then I take that slip and kind of blend, and I'm going to do one more edge. And this one may fall apart on me while I'm doing it. Again, it's too wet. Wait for it to get a little more dry. You definitely don't want it to be leather hard. You just want about maybe 10-15 minutes of drying time. So it'll stiffen up on you, and these will fold up and hold up really nicely. Okay, so those are together. I would take my smooth rib or the back of a serrated rib, and I just kind of clean those up. Get them nice and clean. And again, this is really soggy, so it's kind of a pain. So now I'm going to roll coils. This is the first grading criteria. I'm going to roll some coils. And these don't need to be that big, and I'm gonna roll one long one so I can do all 4 corners. So what I'm gonna do essentially is put coils inside here, and I don't wanna get the whole box together because they're kind of hard to get to. So I'm gonna do these 2 while I have access to them while this flap's still down. So I'm gonna take pretty small coils. They don't need to be too thick, probably about a little thicker than a pencil, maybe a whiteboard marker thick. And I'm gonna score the inside of these corners. So right inside, get my big head out of the way. And I'm gonna score the outside of the coil. Okay, a little bit of slip in there. There's already some from the excess from blending the seam together. You can use that too. But I take the point of the coil, put it all the way in the bottom. Then I'm gonna ease my way up, putting pressure, and I hold the outside corner with my hand. But I put pressure and I ease my way up, all the way up to smash that coil in so it's as fitted as possible so I can have to do less blending later on. Then I break this off at the top, like so. Later on, once it hardens a little more, take a modeling tool inside and I'll just blend that coil even more. Okay, so we shouldn't even be able to see the coil at all later on. And you can tell right away in looking at these boxes whether there's coils there or not. So this one has a coil. This one's got the coil inside. And then this one just has like a fold or like a crease. And you can see it plain as day. So make sure you have your coils in all 4 corners. So at the end, your box will be folded up like so. All 4 corners will have coils. Okay? So I've got one that is actually a little bit more dry, so it's a little sturdier. It's got everything coil-wise. Everything's ready. So now I need to put a top on it. And I'll make some clarifications on this in just a minute. So just like we did the slab mug, the bottom of the slab mug, I'm gonna set it on there. I'm gonna take my needle tool and just trace around my box as neatly as I can. And again, slant your needle tool so it doesn't cut in chunks. You want to make sure you keep this top part fitted to your box because all the sides are going to be a little bit different in size, as precise as a stencil can be or is. It's still, you want to make sure you keep it exactly this way. So I'm going to flip this over, keep my lid exactly where it is. Now, what I get a lot is students just leave this flat and they call that a lid. That's not what I want to see on this. What I'm looking for is I want you to score and slip this on. So I'm going to score and slip. And again, I'm keeping this right where it is because I know it fits precisely that way. So I don't want to move it around or lay it on the table and forget which way I'm going to put it on. Okay, score the inside of this. Okay, a little bit of slip. So I'm going to put the lid on now. Later on, this will no longer be my lid. It's just going to be one enclosed box. So make sure your box is enclosed. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and blend this. And some of you will come to me and ask, well, I just like the lid nice and flat on top. Nope. It's got to be cut out later with an X-Acto blade. Okay, then I'd come back and really clean all this up, my edges, make nice sharp corners if I want them, round corners if I want, depending on what you're going to make out of it. Okay, so it's still got some cleanup to go, but it is one completely enclosed box. Okay, everybody starts with the same box. This is where I kind of back off once we get the structure of the box built and allow for some creativity. So this one you can see, they smashed it down this way, patted it down, and built a fish out of it, but you have to start with an enclosed box. You can paddle this thing, you can do whatever you want to do to change it. Last year, just for the sake of example, I got a few televisions. They put like the TV screen with a relief carving, and then they put knobs on. It had little legs on the bottom, any number of things. Later, after, please wait until it gets leather hard. It's really hard to do while it's wet and it won't fit together just right. And you don't want to wait until it's bone dry either, because then it's impossible to carve through it and the clay chips. So later on, whether you decide what way you want your box, it can be this way, it can be this way, it can be this way, it does not matter, this way or on a side, any number of ways, but you're gonna take the X-Acto blade and you're gonna carve a lid. Be creative, don't give me a straight line, but also don't give me too much. Last year I had somebody who did a surfing theme. They did a wave out of this, and they did waves for their lid, and then after it dried, the lid wouldn't come off. So carve your lid after it gets the leather hard and leave it. Let it dry for a while, but make sure that you've dug all the way through with the X-Acto blade. Once it gets to closer to where it's almost bone dry, then you can take your lid off and take a look, make sure you carved all the way through. But at this point, you've got the box. Make yours different than everybody else's, so that way, and you kind of want to hide the fact that everybody started with the stencil box, so make yours different. Whether you're going to make Rubik's Cube, ice cream cone, TV, fish, again, it's realism or mythological. And then the last but not least, you got to have a handle on it. So the things you're being graded on, coils inside each corner, a handle that fits your theme and the theme itself of whatever you're making, realism or mythological. So either reality-based, like a fish, or something completely different. You can make some weird mythological creature, like Lord of the Rings type thing, or a hobbit, whatever. And then the carved lid. Okay, so again, coils, the carved lid. You got to create whatever you're going to create out of the box, and a handle on top is what you're going to be graded on. Okay? So just be thinking about what it is you're going to be making creature-wise, or realism-wise, mythological-wise, any of those. That is the stencil box.